If you are extremely greedy, but you make money by helping the homeless, is your greed really a bad thing? You know, it's like, no, get out there, make that money, dude. Make that money and help the homeless, right? Like, that's amazing. Isn't this what money's supposed to be? It's supposed to be, for me at least, I always thought of it as being happiness points. But in our current structure, GDP goes up when you externalize costs to the public. And there's nothing counterbalancing that. If we can really turn money into happiness points, greed will be good.
Welcome to The Regeneration Will Be Funded. My name is Matthew Monahan, and in this series, we're exploring the intersections of regenerative finance, technology, and our living planet. Created with Ma Earth, you can find all of our conversations and more at maearth.com. Thanks for joining us. Hello and welcome. Today's conversation is with Griff Green. Griff is the founder of Giveth, CommonStack, General Magic, and several other projects in the crypto space. This was a stimulating and lively discussion that we had at ETH Denver in 2023. Griff talks about how do we use crypto as financial aikido, the 4 types of economic goods. How do we align financial incentives with value created? What are some of the recent innovations in governance afforded by Web3 technologies? And the crypto breakthrough that he believes will win a Nobel Prize in economics someday. I really enjoyed Griff's contagious enthusiasm and lively spirit to make this conversation so interesting. Don't let the Santa hat fool you. There's some deep insights and reflections here. On to the show with Griff Green. Great. Today we're here with Griff Green. Griff is founder of CommonStack, Giveth, and General Magic. Welcome, Griff.
Hey, thanks for having me, man.
And what's the story of the Santa hat?
Well, the big story is that I didn't have a shower this morning, honestly.
Okay, perfect.
but I also I go by Santa a lot. Before crypto, I was a Burning Man. And everyone at Burning Man kind of has a different alter ego, and mine is Santa. So awesome. Every year I'm Santa at Burning Man.
Perfect. And you've been in this space for a long time. We're just wrapping up ETH Denver. How are you feeling?
Oh, great. ETH Denver is my favorite conference, and it's just, the vibes are high. Everyone, the conferences that are just conferences where people go to talk and it's like shill central, that has a vibe and it has a purpose. Of course, it's great. But I like the hackathons, when there's more hackers than people blah, blah, blahing, the builder vibe is like, it's contagious. It just has this like extra quality to it. And so like, I'm very lucky I get to judge the hackathons and I get to be really embedded into the hacker space. Like I got to organize the impact track for ETH Denver.
Nice.
They're starting to decentralize a little bit and they picked Giveth to kind of be a partner to manage all that. So, it really brings you into why we're here, which is to build a different world, not so much this whole like, hey, let's talk to each other and try to raise money.
But okay, so I didn't know this, but now I have a bone to pick because I applied to speak at the Impact Group and didn't get on that track.
Oh no!
So that I have you.
Yes, you do. Well, so
next year, put in a good word for me.
I will.
Griff?
I'll have to look to see because we did the first call basically, and then they did the next step. I'll have to see if it was us blocking
decentralizing responsibility now.
Yeah. Well, I mean, this is just we made their final work a lot easier, but we could have cut you too, man. I don't know.
It's all right.
I don't know.
It's all right. I got into Schelling points. That was enough.
Oh, good.
That was enough.
You don't want to speak more than once at these things anyway.
How many times did you speak?
I only spoke once.
Okay.
It's my new rule.
So you did a little blah, blah, blah. And what was that blah, blah, blah about?
It was about the meta crisis.
Okay. What's meta crisis?
The meta crisis is the largest, I would say it's the largest crisis of our time. And it's effectively the crisis of crises. Like, that's why it's the meta crisis, right? So it's like, 100 years ago, we couldn't kill ourselves. We just didn't have the tools. The things that were existential risks were like extreme weather events or an asteroid hitting the Earth, things like that, right? But now, ever since we created the nuclear bomb, we're just coming up with more and more ways to kill ourselves, and really destroy our civilization as we know it. So, whether it's runaway AI or, just homegrown, like, CRISPR manipulating the RNA of a virus and it just wipes out half of humanity. Like, all these things are possible. And the meta crisis kind of is like looking at all of the crises that are coming up and trying to understand the pattern of more crises arriving and what do we do about it? And the pattern is we have exponential technological growth. We are, as individuals and small groups of people, we have more and more power that we can use to destroy ourselves. And as that, in combination with the inability to coordinate around global issues, is kind of a recipe for disaster.
Right.
There's more and more catastrophic risks being brought to our attention every day. And there's only two likely outcomes. Either, and I would say we could end up with both, where first we actually experience catastrophic failures. Someone, makes an AI bot that like makes Swiss Army knives and just like its only goal is to make Swiss Army knives, and anybody that gets in the way gets cut, or, and so then we have to figure out how to deal with these things that people are creating, or we end up with dystopian control. Our every moves as individuals are watched, and everyone is, under surveillance and made sure that they don't have the power to to make huge destructive contributions. Like we have this huge problem that the way our systems are set up right now, it's the for-profit free market world has this incentive to externalize costs and ignore potential existential risks because it needs to move fast and break things, get investors their return as soon as possible. So they externalize costs, they externalize risk, and just go forward with their product. And the ones that don't are at a disadvantage, right? If you this is the OpenAI versus Google approach, right? Google was being very conservative, understanding the risks, and their AI programs went much slower than all the AI that we're interacting on a day-to-day basis with now. That ignored risks and just pushed forward. So, or at least ignored risks a lot more than they did at Google.
Right.
So in the end, those people who ignored risks are actually being rewarded. And it is this incentive misalignment that really is scary for the society. So we need to find a way to build global coordination networks so that we can continue our exponential technological growth and have a very powerful, technologically advanced society that can mitigate catastrophic risks in an effective way.
So embedded in that, so that we can continue our exponential growth. I mean, some people
exponential
would say technology growth. Sorry, but some people would say, wait. I actually think that the tools have exceeded the consciousness of humanity, and why don't we stop building so many powerful tools and actually refocus on other aspects of what it means to be human? Why do you embed in that so that we can continue the exponential technology?
I guess I would argue that I don't think that we can stop. I mean, humans have some of the underlying principles of economics are that human wants are unlimited, and humans are creative beings who will take and combine thoughts and ideas to build new, ingenious ways of solving problems. The big thing here is we have to make sure that while we're solving problems that face our day-to-day lives, we have to make sure that we're not creating new problems that could threaten humanity, right? I don't think that we can stop human drive to make the world better in some way. We just have to make sure that the people who are driven to protect humanity from existential risks, and even just trying to clean a river, you know, people who are providing value to society writ large, as opposed to providing value that individuals can consume. That this other side, the people who are providing value to society, can also be rewarded for doing that.
Yeah.
If we can nail that, then we can balance,
Yeah.
right? People can continue building technologically advanced solutions to our day-to-day problems while we know that we're protected because there's a whole nother group of people who are being rewarded for protecting society at large.
Yeah. I mean, I completely agree and resonate with the thesis that we have to build these coordination mechanisms.
Yeah.
I do wonder, if you change the incentive structure, which we'll get into, of capitalism into some new post-capitalist, system and paradigm, when we're not rewarding things like OpenAI moving really fast and breaking things, is it the human drive to make the world a better place that's driving the runaway exponential technology, or is it also capitalism's incentives itself that's driving, the kind of, I need to go get mine before someone else gets theirs, and I need to infinitely scale, and then these investor incentives underneath, and so on and so forth. And if we did that along with a culture and a consciousness shift towards all valuing all these other things that we can value, like the river, like our family, like our place, like our happiness and well-being, would we still have the same dilemma? I don't know. It does seem like the cat's out of the bag.
Yeah.
Any thoughts?
The problem is a global consciousness shift. Even if 99% of society, or 99.9% of society has a global consciousness shift and totally comes together in this perfect union, harmony, post-capitalism, we don't have money anymore. One lone nut can still wipe out half of humanity with a virus. We can't, like you said, cat's out of the bag. I do believe in pushing for, the consciousness shift. I don't think jumping from capitalism to post-capitalism happens without a transition.
Sure.
And how do we accept reality, accept where we are as a society, and try to move it towards something that we want, right? And the global consciousness shift is bad user experience. It's a bad UX, right? Like,
what do you mean? What do you mean by that?
I'm a product guy in the Web3 space, right? So there's this concept that when you have an application or you have a product that people are enjoying, you can't just change everything in one day. That really turns them off because they were already enjoying it. But what you can do is kind of like the frog in boiling water thing, right? Where you change one little thing. You have this final product that you're trying to go to, but you start by changing one thing at a time so that people can move with you through the product journey, as opposed to being like, we're changing everything. I'm sure everyone's had this experience where they go to a website and everything's different and they don't know where the buttons are and they're like, this sucks, right? So that's what we need to do with society too. Jumping straight from capitalism to post-capitalism is going to be a really harsh thing. We have to take capitalism, massage it, and bring it to something better, right? And I think we can do that.
Do you think we have time for that?
I don't think we have a choice. I do think we should accelerate it.
In nature, there's plenty of examples of transformation and punctuated equilibrium and species, evolving, and, catastrophic events can be one chance to rethink entire systems holistically. I mean, I do, completely want for us to have this nice, beautiful, slow and gradual process. I'm just, also wondering, do we really have time for that? Does the current system allow for that kind of transformation over slow periods of time, or It's hard to say, right? No one knows the future. What do they say? Like, the politicians and like the evil people, like Illuminati types, it's like never let a disaster go to waste. Right.
Like
totally.
Take advantage of these situations, 9/11 happens and then we get the Patriot Act, right? We go to war and these sorts of things. So we can hopefully take it the other direction. If there are some crises that occur, can we build something awesome? But there was a crisis and it was, COVID. Exactly. And luckily it wasn't that big. Lots of people died, but it wasn't there.
Could have been much worse.
It could have been a lot worse.
Yeah.
The virus could have been much more deadly. And I don't see anything great coming out of that. I feel like maybe what the Web3 space wasn't quite ready for it at that time. And we're probably still not ready for it today. There's some, but I would say that we're on our way, you know? Like, I do think that we have mitigated some major catastrophic failures.
Yeah.
Like if the global financial system collapses and everybody says, no, the US dollar is worth nothing. Chinese currency, worthless. Every other nation state, your currencies are worthless, and there's a global financial collapse. I actually think the Web3 space, the Bitcoin, Ethereum, Rye, you know, the innovations that we've done with Aave for lending and Uniswap for trading, we have a whole decentralized global infrastructure to catch a financial system collapse.
Yeah, and I want to get into that. So back to so you recognize metacrisis.
Yeah.
And wow, humanity's coming up with all these new tools to destroy itself. You're not taking a Luddite approach and saying, let's stop building tools.
But
you can't. But I think one thing I've always admired about you from a distance is you also are channeling that energy and metabolizing it in a way that's positive and building. You're not being paralyzed by the recognition that, oh my God, we're right. But you're actually saying, and now let's do this and let's do that and let's build this. So I'd love to, before we get into the mechanics of the crypto space, like what is the secret sauce of why you're so cheerful?
I don't know. I've been told I have the opposite of depression, like brain chemical imbalances that just keep me happy.
Okay.
You know,
nice.
And that sounds right to me. I'm a pretty recklessly optimistic person in my day-to-day life and long-term vision. So, hey, you know, we'll see. Maybe the vision that I have is unreasonable. I'm not sure.
But it's not just your disposition. You're building stuff.
Yeah,
right.
For sure. I'm a builder. I like, I actually spent a couple of years not having a job and just traveling. I couldn't do it. It's horrible. It's horrible. I would track my day to day, and I had like a little paper spreadsheet, right? You know, those little boxes, types of paper. I can't remember what that's called. But, and I'd write down like my happiness for that day and like, how many times did I take a shower? Did I, because I'm living in a car half the time, I'm traveling in the summers. I'm in the States going to Burning Man and living on the West Coast, just going up and down, sometimes buying and selling things on Craigslist, making a little money here and there, doing massage. I was a massage therapist, stuff like that, just complete anarchist, just tracking my day to day and not doing too much. And one of the categories that I was tracking was productivity. And there was a clear pattern. Like, 'cause I was also meditating a lot, right? And it was weird. I actually saw a negative correlation between meditation and my happiness. But I think it was a second order effect of productivity. 'Cause the days that I could meditate for 2 or 3 hours, right? I just didn't have a whole lot to do.
Right.
And it was the productivity that I noticed that I really loved, that it was like, meditation still made me happier, but because of the correlation was weak compared to the productivity, And so I just get off being productive. I want to build things bigger, the better. I run a Burning Man camp. I have 9-ish projects that I am the founder of and the visionary leader for, right? And, yeah, I just can't stop. I don't know.
Perfect. Stop meditating, just build.
Yeah. I mean, I still meditate occasionally. Like it's not, it was really weird to see the negative correlation. And that's why I brought it up.
Fascinating. Okay. So why Web3? Why crypto? You've been in this space a long time. You've stuck with it.
Yeah.
What gives you hope here? And what are the specifics that make you believe that this is the tool set for these new coordination mechanisms for humanity?
I think humans are run by games, basically. I feel like we're all in this money game together. And, Elon Musk, Jeff Bezos, they have more than enough money. but they still keep going for that top score. You know, and the money game has there's two memes that control society: time and money. These are abstract concepts that don't really exist. Time I can't really do much with, you know, but money, you know, you used to have an army to create an economy. Now you just need to know a couple of nerds. It's insane, man. We can build new economic systems that have second order effects that it's like, think of it as like a video game where you earn points if you help the homeless, support the local community in one way or another, protect a river, address some kind of existential crisis. We can create monetary games that reward any behavior we want. This is like the most powerful technology, social technology that we have in our day to play with. And that's what excites me, is this social technology. You know, we don't think of Web3 as that, but that's all it is. Economics is a social science. It's a soft science. It's not like physics. And we can build these structures that change our behavior. Just as, the corporation, when we created the concept of a corporation, changed our behavior. It changed how we interact with the world. Like a factory that is producing really valuable products for people all around the world, it has a fiduciary duty to externalize its cost, to pollute the river, to pollute the air. If it takes care of its pollution ethically, because of the structure of a corporation, the shareholders can actually sue them, right? They have a fiduciary duty to pollute that river. It's crazy, man. These are the economic structures that are destroying society and have the potential to really destroy our way of life. This is how we counteract it, you know? We got to do like financial Aikido, right? Like take the financial energy, accept that humans are greedy, accept that humans are chasing money, and, you know, accept that people want to trade and need money to live day to day, and not try to rely on altruism and, you know, like this social, like just altruistic burnout is rampant, you know? We have to take what we have. Humans are tribalistic, you know, all of our worst qualities, accept them and build systems with where we can do the Aikido and put that energy to work. You know, if you are extremely greedy, but you make money by helping the homeless, is your greed really a bad thing? You know, it's like, no, get out there, make that money, dude, make that money and help the homeless, right? Like, that's amazing. Isn't this what money's supposed to be? It's supposed to be, for me at least, I always thought of it as being happiness points. But in our current like structure, GDP goes up when you externalize costs to the public. And there's nothing counterbalancing that. If we can really turn money into happiness points, greed will be good, right? That's like the classic, oh, greed is good. Greed is good for excludable good production, right? Like, because our economic system really rewards excludable goods. This is like, we were talking about this before the chat. You sent me a Telegram message about like talking about the 4 types of economic goods, where there's private goods, club goods, common pool resources, and public goods, right? And they're a grid. And this is like, all economists use this structure.
And if you're listening to this just on audio, we're putting this on the video as well.
The main dimension that matters in this matrix is the left and the right, the excludable side and the non-excludable side, right? And when you think of like excludable, non-excludable, what does that really mean? You think of it as open or closed, right? And the rivalrous is like abundant or scarce. So, but the thing that really matters is open or closed. So imagine a movie theater. Movie theaters have a very clear business model. You charge for tickets, you create an excellent experience, people come back for more to enjoy the movie theater, right? The experience, in my opinion, would be even better for movies in a park. free movies in a park that anyone from the community can come to and enjoy. And it's like a beautiful open air experience. You get to meet the community around you. It's accessible to everyone in the space, and you get to meet your neighbors. There's so many positive second order effects that can come from a movie in a park versus a movie theater.
Mm-hmm.
But because the movie in a park is non-excludable, anyone can walk up. It's an open event.
Right.
How do people get the funding to throw movies in the park on a regular basis?
Right.
They don't. They can't. Maybe they put up a donation box. Maybe they get a grant from the government. Like community council has some kind of community event space funding, which eventually comes from taxes. Right? There's no real good funding structures that can reward the people who are producing value for the community at large. Right?
So we have rivalrous and non-rivalrous, and we're focusing here on excludable and non-excludable.
Yeah.
And in that kind of non-excludable, non-rivalrous, we have this beautiful magic quadrant called public goods.
Yeah.
Right. And this is, I think, what your shirt is really talking about.
Yeah.
Fund what matters.
Exactly.
Funding public goods. Now, you mentioned there's not a lot of ways to fund public goods today other than donations, i.e. kind of from the nonprofit space, or governments from things like taxes.
Yeah.
And that there's this altruistic burnout.
Yeah.
And yet, most of the projects that you're involved with, if I understand correctly, are nonprofits.
Yeah.
Right. So, and you're building a lot of tools for nonprofits. So help me reconcile that.
The biggest issue is honestly the label of nonprofit. That label is so discouraging.
100%.
It's a destructive label. Nonprofits, NGOs, whatever you want to call them, they're producing value for society. And the key thing is they are producing value, right? They should be able to be rewarded for that value. That's like my main thesis in everything that I do.
Nonprofits should be rewarded for the value they create.
Exactly. And with crypto economic systems, with blockchain tech, right? In Web3, we're doing it, right? One of my favorite examples is CureCoin. This is an old blockchain, 2014, right? And they took something that was naturally altruistic, which was folding at home, some software you could run on your computer that would fold proteins for cancer and Alzheimer's research. And then the protein, like the computing power, you're basically donating your computing power to researchers at Stanford to do the work that they're doing in protein research. And they used to just have like a leaderboard where, hey, the contributors are all competing to be the most altruistic. And then someone created CureCoin, where the proof of work algorithm was folding proteins for this research.
Right.
And ever since that, CureCoin has been number one on that leaderboard because they're literally just creating a token, a package of artificial scarcity, right? And rewarding people who are creating real world abundance.
So what we're really talking about is just aligning the incentives of value exchange and money with what are we trying to actually do as a society? What are the outcomes we actually want?
Yes. And specifically about this ability to create new monetary systems, new economic structures that can issue a currency and reward people for contributing and creating value that the system wants to encourage. But then for that to work, and this is where CureCoin kind of failed, is that they have to ensure demand for that digital token that's being produced. So if you can issue a token, it's just fake money. We're just printing fake money. It's crazy, you know? But if you can issue a token and use it to reward people for taking care of the homeless or, providing some kind of value for society, and then ensure that there is demand for that token, then you can have a whole economic system. You can have a market-based economy for making the world a better place.
Right.
And what's really cool is when this happens at scale, where there's thousands, millions of these organizations, just as many of these types of organizations as there are companies. Right. Where right now we have a very developed free market system where there are thousands of companies trying to create value for individuals to enjoy.
Right.
If we could have thousands, millions of economic organizations, that DAOs, right, that are actually trying to provide value for society at large, competing to provide public services, right? That governments and nonprofits are the only ones who provide. We could actually have a nice balance.
Right.
Because like the factory that's polluting the river, right? They're providing value. They're creating widgets that people want and are willing to buy. But there's just no way to coordinate around the value of a clean river. If we can find effective coordination mechanisms for the value of the clean river, then we can have a real conversation between the needs of the factory and the needs of the community that wants a clean river.
One thing that Austin Wade Smith from Regen Foundation and I talked about, a shared excitement around, and now we can actually give the clean river or the river itself a wallet and an economic data point, and it can share in that economy as well. So Satoshi gave us a white paper. We got digital property rights on the internet, or the idea of digital property. We're somewhat in this conversation using currency and token interchangeably. Yeah. We still have a lot of nation state regulatory things to figure out about what is a currency, what is a token, what is a commodity, what is a security, et cetera. But for just simplicity's sake, we now have the ability to issue these new tokens of value exchange and set monetary policy. And all we need is a couple of programmers, and we can actually figure this stuff out and run thousands and thousands of experiments, and hopefully orient that towards these coordination games for public goods, for giving us as humanity the things that we really want and need.
Exactly. I like the term token because there's a non-fungible tokens, which wouldn't really be currencies,
right? Because
the currency needs to be fungible to be like a medium of exchange and these sorts of things. But and really tokens are just like a digital package of rights. This is what Michael Zargham says, and you should get Zargham if you can.
Yeah, we'd love to, Michael, if you're listening.
Yeah, Z, man, get out here. But whenever Z talks, it's just like,
digital packet.
Yeah, a token is a digital package of rights. And the other cool thing about Bitcoin, though, that you just mentioned, it's like, okay, Satoshi made the white paper. He created the first network good, right? This is a term that Kevin Owocki has coined, or at least has popularized.
Among many.
Yeah, exactly. The guy's a meme machine.
Totally.
But I really like this concept of network goods, where you have a system that is providing value to society. Like Bitcoin itself is an economic system that's providing a public good. Decentralized, unstoppable global financial infrastructure. Anyone in the world can create an address and receive money from anyone else in the world. You can't stop it. It's non-excludable. Anyone can create an address. Thousands of types of software. And it's non-rivalrous. If I create an address, it doesn't affect your enjoyment of also creating an address. This is a public good. And it's not supported by donations. It's not supported by taxes. It's supported by issuance. The issuance of a token, in this case, Bitcoin. And then the demand for that token is for paying for the transactions. Of course, it is rivalrous in some ways, because if you're trying to send money, that's a rivalrous part of the system. But being able to receive money is a non-rivalrous part of the system, right?
Right.
So, and to give credit to corporations and the tech space, like they're creating a lot of public goods too. Like Facebook is effectively a public good, right? My grandma can see pictures of her grandchildren, and it's pretty effortless. She's not really tech savvy or whatever, but she has her little iPad that she calls her Etch-a-Sketch, and she gets to see her kids, and she doesn't have to pay anything for it. And it's really non-rivalrous as well. Like if she's looking at pictures of her grandkids, anyone can, right? It's not. So there are other ways of creating public goods in the for-profit space. But I think this model of issuing a currency and creating demand for the currency, this is so young. And we have a lot of opportunity to avoid some of the perverse incentives that happen in the for-profit space around, the attention economy, trying to monopolize data, sell data, and treat people who are participating in those systems as like, something that's being farmed, as opposed to economic systems where we can program values
Mhm.
into the system itself.
Got
Right?
it.
I mean, it's just we're embarking on a novel world.
Absolutely. And so we've talked now a lot about incentive structures. I'm curious, okay, what else does this mean and do for governance itself?
Innovation around governance pretty much has stopped for the last 200 years.
Right.
I mean, let's be real. Like we're using in the US, we're using the same governance systems that were created in the 1700s.
Mm.
There weren't even trains at that time, right? Like we're talking, it took weeks to send a message across to Europe, right? Like, and we're using this same governance structures.
Same ballot. Same
Yeah.
One vote.
Electoral system. Like, what are you kidding me?
Right.
Like it's a joke.
Mm.
It's a joke. Now that we have the ability to start to experiment with things, like the blockchain space is still really underdeveloped, right? Our voting systems are horrible. It's like the worst of both worlds. It's worse than what is existing in the centralized, like.
And why is
governance.
that?
Well, very few. First off, it's plutocratic, almost
Right.
almost universal.
More tokens, more votes.
Exactly.
Mm.
More money, more votes. Like tokens can be transferable or non-transferable. A non-transferable reputation token, that's a different game. And we do not include reputation systems as much as I would like.
Mhm.
Like I'm into one person, one vote for a lot of discussions, but probably not for how an economy should develop, because there are people who have better insights, are like more connected and have a better view of how the economy is developing
Mhm.
and its own system. There should be a level of like you're an individual, right? Like I really like quadratic voting, which kind of gives it this like, well, as a unique individual, we mitigate the total power you've developed, but you still have a little bit more say than someone who's just like a passive observer. They have some tokens and they just showed up to a call once.
Mhm.
Like they don't
Right.
really know what's going on
Right.
or who would be the best in this position. They shouldn't have the same say as a day-to-day contributor,
Right.
right? But
So what you're implying is that blockchain now gives us room for experimenting across the axis of how much do we weight certain votes and not other votes. We can do one person, one vote systems. I know you've worked on
Yeah.
other types of voting systems with Common Stack. I mean, what are some of the high level concepts being thrown around here?
first off, voting should be easy.
Hmm.
This like going through and reading hours of forum posts and then like trying to understand what's happening and then like going and having to vote no against the mass and everyone's seeing that you're voting no and everyone's voting yes and then
Hmm.
having to be like, oh well, I'm sorry, I have to defend myself now if I want to vote no. That this whole like not being anonymous and not being and having real-time results
Hmm.
is just like everyone knows that's bad,
Mhm.
right? But I would go higher level and just say we can do better than yes, no voting processes, or I'm voting for this person, this person, this person. Voting should be signal aggregation, right? If we have a group of people that all want to coordinate together, can we make their signals heard in a way that just naturally evolves pushes the DAO or the community to go a certain direction,
Hmm.
right? So like I don't vote to have Amazon just like try to sell me a backpack. Amazon takes my behavior on their website and probably other people's websites and takes all of that data and aggregates it to the point where it's like, you know what? I think he wants a backpack, right? What if we could do that with our communities? What if we could take the data that people are putting out, what they say on the forum posts and what people are, or even just create little games, little simple games where they can signal their preferences. Like, you know what my favorite voting is that I've ever seen? If you ever go to like an airport bathroom in the States, they have this little like smiley face button.
How did we do today?
Yeah.
How are you feeling? Yeah.
Yeah, exactly. Okay, is the bathroom in a good state or a bad state?
Right.
Going through security, was it good or bad? Right?
Mhm.
And I'm walking by, it's very convenient. I just click the button.
I guess the cynical part of me says, though, that I don't know that that's really working at airports, because I can't say as the security experience, at least, is any better these days.
Yeah.
So it sounds like, and I guess the point I would emphasize is like, it doesn't have to be that we create voting systems on the blockchain that are transparent. It doesn't have to be that they're only one vote. What we've got now is a set of tools where we can experiment and fit for purpose a variety of configurations, whether it's with transparency, with reputation, with quadratic voting, with, looking at how many tokens someone's contributing.
There's a lot of, transparency is an interesting term, right?
Mm-hmm.
Like we have just an incredible technological power in the blockchain space. We can make things partially transparent. We can say, if you're a delegate, you can see maybe like what your delegate votes, but
right.
but only in a private chat room where other people, and if you disclose that, you auto undelegate, right?
Mm-hmm.
Like we can build interesting mechanisms where things can be anonymous but transparent at the same time.
Mm-hmm.
There's this guy, Justin Holmes, who like does this incredible bluegrass music where he'll just jam philosophically. Mm-hmm. And he has this great jam at ETH Denver in like 2020 or something, where he talks about, is privacy in violation of internet metaphysics? That like information wants to be free, right? And that privacy is effectively saying, no, this information is restrained. It cannot be free. It's going to be restricted. And in some ways, you could argue at a surface level that that's in violation of internet metaphysics. But actually, what it allows is for people to speak their opinions free of attribution, right? If you have to defend your position, often it's just not worth saying. So we need transparency, but at the same time, we don't want that to restrict what we really want, which is good decisions, Like, what is the goal of a voting system? It's to aggregate people's opinions and satisfy everybody's wants, in a collective way, right? Because the collective wants to go a direction. How do we understand what people's wants and needs are, and then use that to direct the collective? It's not about writing forum posts and voting on some random tool. It's about understanding what people want, aggregating that together, and moving towards satisfying the collective needs.
Right. So we have now tokens, incentive structures. We get to re-coordinate around things like public goods in new and novel ways. We have new ways of bringing in participation into governance, lots of open space for experimentation. You seem, here we are, 2023, as enthusiastic and, busy and building as ever about the problems and the solutions here. I'd love to just maybe at a high level introduce a few of the projects and key initiatives that you're the most excited about at this stage.
Sure.
Yeah.
So one of the things that I really want to see changed is the plutocratic nature of blockchain decision making.
Right. And Vitalik's been quite vocal about this as well, right?
Yeah, soulbound tokens being the meme of Vitalik's meme for this important factor. I like reputation tokens, but it also, soulbound tokens in many ways is a better term because, like, in our traditional systems, nonprofits, governments, corporations, they're all capital controlled. It's horrible. Nonprofits, like donors have so much power over the nonprofit space. If they say, hey, I'm going to donate to help the homeless, but you have to use this money to buy blankets. It's like, okay, I guess we have like a bunch of blankets.
Right.
But if people who used to be homeless or are still homeless are contributing, wouldn't it be great if they had a say on this direction? And this is what we can really do. Like, this is the power I can't wait to see unlocked. Where yes, people who are contributing capital, they deserve some voice, right? But not outsized compared to the people who are contributing labor,
right?
The beneficiaries,
right,
of the value that's being produced, and the experts. The people who can really provide a lot of positive contribution onto the direction. All of those groups should have some kind of say. And how do we reward? How do we give voice?
Right. And recognize. Right.
Yeah. Yeah. And if we can do that, if we can build systems that really appreciate a good set of stakeholders who can aggregate signals effectively and move the collective in a direction, oh man, it would be way better than any kind of nonprofit structure that exists.
Yeah.
And then on top of that, if we have this reputation token alongside a monetary token or a reputation system, it can be multiple tokens. It can be a complex system, right? As long as it's approachable by the people who are using it, then we can have like a complex reputation system and a complex monetary system kind of fused over the top of each other that can create almost its own, what does Balaji call it? A network state. I don't really like the word state because I'm a crazy anarchist. So maybe like a network nation. That's what David
Jonathan
Johnston.
Hillis is calling it Network City.
Network City.
Yeah.
David Johnston, who's an OG, like this guy, like I think he basically helped make Mastercoin, which is like the first like Ethereum-like system that ever existed on top of Bitcoin. He calls it a network nation. I kind of like that framing, honestly. Either way, I also like the term purpose-driven economies, right? These are the people who care about some kind of mission, vision, and want to do it by following a set of values that they can all collectively agree with. Getting those people together and having them have a way to be rewarded for the value they produce, but also like risking their time and efforts. Maybe it's a waste, just like it is in the free market world. You can have a startup and make a lot of money, or you can have a startup and lose it all, right?
Yeah.
And that system works really well, actually, in the free market space. Could we bring that into the public goods space and augment it with all of this epic tech, while also being cognizant of the potential existential risks that we can create with this epic tech?
Right.
Like that's what we're building. That's what I'm excited about. So you were trying to get me to shill.
You kind of had. We mentioned quadratic funding. We mentioned now soulbound tokens, reputation tokens. What are some of the other kind of hot, cool coordination mechanisms that we should be pursuing right now?
One of the coolest pieces of tech that I'm so proud of contributing to is the augmented bonding curve.
Yeah, tell me more about that.
So bonding curves sound really complicated, but it's actually
very
really
mathematical.
Simple. Yeah. Blah, 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 big words, right? But it's super simple. Forget about the words. It's just a smart contract, which is like a program on the blockchain, right? That it can hold money. And when it receives money, it'll issue a token and hold the money that it receives. And if someone doesn't want that token, they can send it to this bonding curve, that smart contract, and release the collateral that it's holding, right? And so what's really cool here, and I think it will honestly win a Nobel Prize in economics, is that token bonding curves have created the first single-sided market that we've ever had. If I want to buy something, someone has to sell it to me. I want to buy Amazon stock, someone has to sell it. I want to sell a chair, someone has to buy it. If I want to buy a token on a bonding curve, I don't need another counterpart.
Don't need a seller.
It's going to be created for me when I send money to it. And if I want to sell that token, if we issued a token on the bonding curve and everyone wants to sell, they all can. They can all send it to the bonding curve and receive the collateral that the bonding curve is backing each token with. Right.
And there's a baked-in incentive because the more people that then participate in that collateral, the price of the tokens goes up, right?
Exactly. So it has, and this is the biggest selling point, or maybe the biggest innovation of a bonding curve, is it has a deterministic price discovery.
Right.
If there's a reason the SEC doesn't let small companies just start going public, right? There is in the crypto space, we give the SEC a lot of shit. But honestly, there's a reason they exist.
Yeah.
If a restaurant starts selling their stock openly, right? Which they have stock and they can sell it privately, but having an open market price discovery is not a good idea, because let's say COVID hits and people need that money, right? And everyone wants to sell the stock in that restaurant and no one wants to buy. What's the price? Is the price zero? Is that all their stock worthless? Technically, yes.
Mm.
The price is zero. But that's not the real price of that stock.
Right.
It's that we don't have adequate price discovery mechanisms
Mm.
in low liquidity environments.
Right.
At least we didn't until we created bonding curves.
Right.
And so Simon de la Rouvier and Bancor kind of co-developed this independently.
Mhm.
They will win a Nobel Prize. It's just a matter of time
Mhm.
because this is just an incredible economic innovation.
Are we seeing early examples that we can kind of walk through or look at?
Yeah. I used this augmented bonding curve to create the token engineering commons, right? I mean, me and a team, of course.
Right.
A whole community designed this economy in a collaborative way. It was very beautiful.
Right. Full disclosure, I'm a member and participated in all that.
Woo! Really? So
Yeah.
you saw? So you got?
I've
Did you
been
actually?
through all this? Yeah.
But did you participate in like the collaborative economics system where you actually like got to parameterize the system? Like,
Yeah.
you did?
Yeah. I went through the wizard. Yeah.
No way.
Yeah, and then read the tutorials and yeah.
That's so cool. Did you
Mm.
submit an economy?
I think so. Yeah. I went through the whole process. I think so. Yeah. I mean, these were early days. Everything was still
course.
like, I mean, it's fairly like new and early, right? But
I mean,
yeah, no, I think it's fascinating. And I think that, what Common Stack, Token Engineering Commons is doing is really important in the space because what you're emphasizing is that in these low liquidity environments, AKA environments where things are just starting up, and like, so if we need some way to create bootstrapping funding mechanisms that don't just involve pitching a bunch of VCs or getting a bunch of government grants,
yeah.
and that can actually grow with time and let the people on the ground in the nonprofit or for-profit, whatever, the people doing the work do the actual work.
Yeah.
And having that kind of predictable price discovery mechanism is quite profound.
Yeah.
What I'm wondering is, are we seeing examples, and maybe if you could walk through for listeners a bit more of the TEC example.
Sure. I'm just blown away that you actually play. It's like we worked really hard to make that accessible to random people, open and just like.
Yeah, I was like on a
tearing
farm
up
in
just
New
thinking about
Zealand,
it.
just like sitting there playing with bonding curves.
I mean, that's exactly what we worked so hard to do that. So it just like makes me really happy,
Nice work.
Yeah, man. Because like token engineering is really complex and all that stuff, but it can be made accessible.
Mhm.
So, so the thing about bonding curves and why they're so important is, like you said, the bootstrapping mechanism. In the for-profit space, you can have a startup, you can raise some money, and you can get started, right? 3 people, no big deal. Find an investor, get some capital. And that's a very clear, like well thought out process that anyone has access to. And that's because it's like this easy like revenue profit like pattern. In an economic system, it's a little bit more complicated because of the need for liquidity. Like you can't just bootstrap an economy without having a lot of friends with a lot of money, right? Like, so I'm early crypto. I can launch Giveth and start a token. Kevin Owocki connected with all the consensus crew. He can get investment. Nick Johnson, ENS, early crypto, like very well connected in the Ethereum space. We can all provide liquidity for our tokens.
Right.
Some random nobody in New Zealand
Yep.
can't just launch a token, but with a bonding curve, they can. And in the augmented bonding curve, the problem with bonding curves is that they are a little complicated and we don't really know the best way to parameterize these things.
Totally.
So with the token engineering commons, first off, let me say token engineering, just a little piece.
Yeah.
Token engineering is probably the most critical piece of engineering, like new field of engineering that is like even more critical than like AI engineering, in my opinion, because it's really about how do we design these economies, this public infrastructure, this public economic infrastructure, so that it can be safe to use for the public to enjoy. You don't YOLO, go to Home Depot, buy some cement, and build a bridge across a river for anyone to enjoy, right? You get a civil engineer to approve the plans, maybe several, right? In the crypto space, we're like YOLOing, we get some devs, we make sure the code works, but who says that the design is going to work? Did we correctly configure it within a space that we know where we're running simulations and like making sure that like everything is going to work the way we expect.
Mhm.
Consistent failures
Mhm.
that are token engineering based, not bugs in the code,
Right.
but just like the Luna Terra like UST example is the most obvious.
Mhm.
That was a token engineering failure.
Right.
They did not control for their configuration space. They didn't expect to get so big and go down so catastrophically so quickly.
Right.
Right.
Right. So we have these tokens. We can run all these experiments, but the problem is a lot of the experiments are going to fail. And unfortunately, especially in something like Luna, there's real world consequences for a lot of people.
Yeah.
And so Token Engineering Commons, as I understand it, is kind of a meta research think tank around the field of token engineering and creating these simulation tools so that we can actually start to play with, okay, well, what happens if I make the bonding curve like this versus like this, or,
Yeah.
all these different parameters. And
Totally.
then essentially we have a little bit more still very much risky experimentation, Wild West,
Yeah.
but a little bit more pre-thought to the process of how we're designing the tokens.
Absolutely. And designing a token, it's really token engineering. It's really economic engineering.
Right.
Right. And economies are social systems. So we need conflict resolution in token engineering systems. We need lawyers. We need, politicians. We need to understand so much. It's a social science. And the token engineering, this is like a social coordination mechanism that we're designing. And so it's more than even just the data science and computer science part. There's so many factors. And because of this, it's very complex to wrap your head around. And we really need an organization like an engineering association like the IEEE to help guide this new field of study. And that's what the Token Engineering Commons is doing. And the coolest thing about the Token Engineering Commons is it's basically just a donation system. People put money in, they got a volatile token that's backed by a bonding curve where its price discovery is deterministic and all that magic. But then all it does is kind of support different groups who are advancing token engineering. The Token Engineering Academy, who has trained thousands of token engineers at this point with various classes, and supporting open source research and building open source tooling like CAD, which is a simulation software for economies, or like NumPy, which is an open source like Python library set. They gave $25,000 to that. But yet, the Token Engineering Commons token, this is a donation economy, has beat the price of Ether. It did better than Ethereum. Right? Like, what? You're telling me, what altcoin can say that? What, $3 million, $2 million market cap, what even $30 million market cap tokens can say that? That when it was summer of 2021, Ethereum was $3,300. TEC was $1, right? Right now, if you bought $1,000 worth of TEC and $1,000 of Ether, your Ether is worth about $500, and your TEC is worth about $800.
Right, because once again, we're not talking about a typical two-sided marketplace, buyers and sellers, free floating. What we're talking about is a one-sided marketplace on a predetermined curve.
Yep. With a social design in mind too. We had a system in place called the trusted seed. We didn't let any speculator just come in and initialize the economy.
Right.
We made sure that people were, value driven, not profit driven.
Right.
That this is like an altruistic economy. And we made sure using social systems to keep the profit extractors out of its initial stage. And that's part of token engineering. This is because the bonding curve launch is a very delicate process. So these systems are very complicated. And bonding curves are magical things, but there's certain ways to use them correctly.
Right.
And there's lots of ways to use them wrong.
Right.
So,
I love it. I mean, we've just barely scratched the surface between things like quadratic voting, soulbound tokens, the augmented bonding curve, and you have a number of these layered experiments and innovations inside of Giveth. And you're doing incredible work there. And I guess I want to, shill the episode you did with Owaki
Yeah.
around coordination mechanisms, because what we've given people, I think, is a taste that there's a whole lot underneath
Oh
the
my
surface
God.
here. Like the iceberg, a lot of people see crypto, a lot of people see Web3, they only see the top. And what they're not seeing is that there's a tremendous amount of experimentation, study, and opportunity and potential. And importantly, we need to direct it in positive directions and bring more projects like Giveth to the surface. Before we go, and we didn't do Giveth nearly enough justice, but I do want to ask you about what is General Magic, because this is fairly new in terms of, I haven't heard you talk too much about this.
I've started a lot of crypto nonprofits. General Magic is actually a for-profit dev team, but I would almost call it more like a benefit corp, because we give discount. Like, the need that it's trying to solve is a lot of people who are in the public goods crypto space. They're trying to build with a lot of restricted resources, especially compared to like number go up, pump and dump Ponzi schemes that VCs think that they can dump on retail. That's no problem, right? But when you're value driven and you're trying to build something that really adds value to society, VCs don't want to invest.
Right.
I mean, and really they don't want it, because they don't, even if they support, they don't even want to dump on it. They actually, so it's almost good that they don't support, right?
Yeah.
But that means that the capital is limited, and maybe you don't have the money to have a full-time designer in your team, or maybe you're trying to launch a product and you need some front-end help. So we do a really good job at sourcing, qualified talent from like the global South and places where they don't need to be paid so much. But they're very talented and have Web3 experience, years of Web3 experience. And we can give a good rate to people in the impact space who are trying to build a project, but just need a little bit of back-end help here, or a little bit of token engineering consulting,
Right.
And we provide all kinds of services. It's basically a full-on team that could launch products that is there on demand for the impact space. And I would say the rates are impossibly cheap compared to other Web3 services.
Right.
Now, of course, if you want just a back-end support, you could probably find a team in Croatia or something that could offer cheaper than us, right? But they wouldn't have the Web3 experience. So it's kind of like it's this, we're kind of this we're very competitive in the Web3 space, but we're not like, we're not like the cheapest person around. If you have connections, go for it. But we're trying to offer a different kind of support. And we're very focused on impact DAOs and people in the Web3 public good space.
So it's a service DAO for impact DAOs and people who want to start to play around with some of these new coordination mechanisms, some of these new token engineering architectures can effectively get some supportive help from General Magic. We'll put a link into the show notes. We'll also link to the episode you did with Owaki on Green Pill recently around coordination mechanisms. If people want to get a much more deep dive, as well as your talk at ETH Bogota, which goes into a lot of these frameworks a bit more as well.
Yeah, public goods Legos.
Yeah, public goods Legos. I really appreciate your time. This is the last interview we're doing at ETH Denver. It's quite fitting to end on this note. Is there any final words or messages you want to share?
Yeah, it's just really nice hanging out and ranting about everything that I'm doing. It's really, thank you for holding the space and giving me the space to talk about this. It was really fun.
Yeah, I had a lot of fun too. Yeah. Thanks, Griff.
Thanks, man.
Love it.
Awesome. Yeah, thanks.
That was the most fun interview.
Really?
Yeah, your energy is contagious.
All right, what'd you think? Leave us a comment below. Join our community Discord. Remember, none of this has been financial or legal advice. You can check out Griff's talks, the Green Pill episode, and more about his projects. Links are in the show notes. And of course, all of the conversations that we're having are available at maearth.com. Look forward to seeing you on the next one. Cheers.